it's my Pride and Prejudice. Like my wife could watch that movie over and over again. It doesn't get old. And I just finished my 4th replay of Red Dead 2. And I mean, Arthur Morgan is one of my favorite protagonists, like fictional characters, like literature to film to like to games ever created. And just, I don't know, the story and the fact that you could ride across the same like hill 10 times and you're going to have 10 different things happen. Like the replay value for me anyway, I just get lost in it. Where it's like, yeah, you're gonna get held up one round, you're gonna get attacked by a bear, you're gonna try to get trapped by a guy who pretends he's injured. It's just like they're so creative. And it's very deeply Catholic, which I devote. There's a chapter in the book that actually kind of bookend it with Red Dead 2. In Arthur's, it's very kind of like Gran Torino Catholic. Like not on the surface, but you've like it's redemption. It's the guy who's like too far gone, too lost in this Wild West gang, but has to face his own mortality, has to face the actions of his gang that are increasingly going sideways. And it's like he gets a diagnosis that he's dying. And so it really kind of raises up like, what am I going to do with the time I have left? And it has a pivotal conversation moment where he's sitting on a bench with a nun at a train station. And I remember like the first time I ever played, I'm like, what? This is incredible. And
yeah,
he literally lays down his life so his friend can live.
Wow.
And I was done. Like the first time I played it through and to get to that part where it ends, and I just sat there. I was like, what? This is incredible. Like my first game was Duck Hunt. And so to be at this place in time, it's like, this is incredible. And, you know, I'm going to stop talking here for now, but like what, you know, you say in the book, like what I say in the book is it's a medium, like video games, if that's your cup of tea or board games or whatever, there's a lot of good, just as literature and film, like there's a lot of trash and there's a lot of really good stuff. And there's in the best of it, there are the seeds of the gospel that we can point to and use to evangelize.
Amen. Very well said. I'll have to play that, except
Same.
I'd have to get a PlayStation. Yeah, I mean, I watched a review on it, and even just like how open it is, the open world and all the little details. Somebody talked about how in the game it really encourages you to like live slowly and take in all the little details of life and the mundane. And I feel like that's really beautiful in and of itself too, to just like take in life and the beauty that it has to offer. So that's really cool. Awesome. All right, next panelist that we've got Tony Manfredonia. Tony is a Michigan-based composer and singer-songwriter known for his symphonic cinematic sound, blending orchestral expertise with a genre-bending approach. His work spans from symphonic rock albums to video game soundtracks, including contributions to Minecraft and Universal Studios. Featured on major platforms like Shalom World and EWTN, Tony's music captures life's emotional depths through dynamic, passionate compositions. His versatile style leaves a lasting impression across various artistic landscapes. Welcome, Tony. And
Thank
we
you.
just kind of talked about this, how you are quite the jack of all trades when it comes to your creative endeavors, and you just love to create all types of music, and that's very impressive. I listened to your most recent album, Anchored, I believe.
Anchored, yep.
Yeah, and I was in tears.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you being here. Yeah, and Anchored, Bobby mentioned like marriage stuff. Like the whole album is about spiritual warfare in marriage, but like with a big cinematic. It's kind of like literally a fight between good and evil is kind of the nature of the album, but in a symphonic rock kind of way. It was a vulnerable moment because it was sort of a true story of my own life, but how the grace of God kind of saved my marriage and all that kind of stuff. But and ever since that album, like even in my scoring work, I've been trying to you even mentioned the word evangelize. Like I've been trying to reach those in the gaming world because I was in that world for so long before I even made this album. It's almost like, okay, how can I now bring my video game soundtrack audience over to like these stories of faith, these songs of faith, and that kind of thing. So it's tough to navigate. It is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of situation, but
yeah,
oftentimes better than a master of one, as Shakespeare would have said. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah,
But
and
thank
I'm
you.
sure we'll talk a bit more about that and your own experience in the gaming industry as well.
Sure.
You said your favorite game is World of Warcraft. Why is that?
Well, I feel like I'm slightly biased simply because I've been playing it since 2004. So it has sort of been part of my life. But I think the camaraderie, right? The fact that it's a connected world and there's people all the time, right? And like Bobby mentioned, sometimes there are experiences that, in his words, are trash. And other times there's experiences where how can you bring in, you're constantly talking to people, right? So it's like, it's such an opportunity. It's such an opportunity. It's like if someone is being mean or not so nice, or I don't know, maybe your dungeon or raid group like failed and someone's getting real nasty, you know, that's a perfect opportunity to jump in and say, hey, like, it's all right. No, we did our best, you know, or whatever it is. But I think there's a communal aspect to it that, you know, you need, someone has to craft the potions that you have to buy from. And, you know, you work together as a team of 15 or 20 to like defeat evil. It's very much, and especially right now, the current expansion is very much like about light versus dark. And as Bobby mentioned, like sort of like, where can you see Christ in certain experiences? There's a cutscene. I don't want to spoil too much in case someone has or wants to play it, but there's a scene where one of the main protagonists, he's sort of like a paladin. He's sort of like a knight of the light, so to speak. But he's been struggling to kind of call down the light. And one of his friends said, no, just let go. Just let the light come through you. Like, just replace the word light with God. And it's like in sort of the dire moment, he sort of just calms his mind and just sort of like lets the light in and defeats the evil. So it's just like one of those things where, I don't know, I'm a sucker for anything that's sort of good versus evil, especially when good triumphs. I'm sorry, like it's like the Lord of the Rings over and over, but it never gets old for me. So and the music is also like, there's literally 20 years worth of soundtracks for the World of Warcraft experience. So highly recommended. All the music is phenomenal. So you can't go wrong.
My gosh. 20 years that game has been out for 20 years.
Been playing it longer than like more than half of my life.
Wow, that's amazing.
Crazy.
It's still, and people are still like playing
it's
this.
Still going. Still going. Still going strong.
Yeah.
Trying to not make a Leroy Jenkins joke here, but
yeah.
had to throw it out there.
The
classic. OG. And Theresa, who are you?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I just remembered that. I haven't introduced myself. Yeah. I'm Theresa. As you can see, my name says Saint Sprites, but I'm the owner of a small little business called Saint Sprites, and we create Catholic video game merch. Maybe I should grab an example here. So, you might not be able to see this because of my camera. Yeah, it's a little blurred. Hold up. Oops.
She makes great stickers and hoodies and kid shirts now that my kids are very excited about.
Oh, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, if you look at my icon here, that's a little Blessed Carlo right there. And then I've got these Blessed Carlo Sprite sweater. But yeah, I'm just a creative over here in Seattle, and started this shop because I was very inspired by Blessed Carlo and just wanted to make these little stickers and hoodies to encourage people to have childlike faith and Christian adventure. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I guess my favorite game, you see, I'm 26, so I didn't grow up in like the original game era, but
that's okay.
I grew up with
okay.
the
we forgive you.
Thank you. I know I need to catch up. But I grew up with the Nintendo DS. That was like my thing. I think my favorite game was probably Dragon Quest IX. I don't know if Tony played it.
Amazing.
Yeah,
the Dragon Quest in general is just great. The whole series.
Yes, I love that game mostly for like it's incredible storyline. But I mean, I'm a girl, so I'm always a sucker for like games where you can dress up. And so like customization stuff, you could customize your character, make it look like you. And I played this game a million times, but I would always like make my 3 teammates in my party like my 3 best friends at the time. So I had like a best friend who had blonde hair, and so I made one of them have blonde hair and stuff. So that was probably just one of my favorite games as a child, and still one of my favorite games today. So yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for telling us about who you are and sharing a bit about your favorite games. If you're just joining us, welcome. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what your favorite game is. But yeah, I'll also, just to let folks know, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for Bobby or Tony or myself, feel free to hold on to those, and we'll try and answer as many as we can at the end of the panel. So great. All right, my first question for y'all, and we can just kind of chat about this. What was your first experience with gaming, and how did you come to love games?
Shout out to Amelia with Kingdom Hearts. I became an adult through that series because it took so long for them to make those games. It was like my college dorm as a freshman or sophomore, and then as a senior in college, and then I had 3 kids by the time they made the third.
Wow.
So it's like guys, what are you doing? I don't have the time anymore. My first experience was Duck Hunt and the original Mario, and I didn't really fall in love, I'd say, until my uncle loaned us his Super Nintendo when I was 2nd grade. And so the 16-bit era, I was like sucked in. So Super Mario World, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound was my first RPG ever, which was very like a skewed entry into the genre, like looking back on it. But I was like, this is great. I love it. And then like masterpieces on a 16-bit console. And so too, that I understood, like, this isn't just a waste of time. Like there's some incredible stories here. And I mean, Chrono Trigger has a special place in my heart as a masterpiece of a game, like music, story, just the graphics. So I think that era of gaming really like hooked me. Like I'm in. I wasn't super athletic at that point in my life, so it was also a natural like this brings me enjoyment. And you know, Tony, you talked about the community aspect of games, and to the extent I've played with my brother, I've played with the neighborhood group with GoldenEye, or
we all did that.
You know, or the college LAN parties.
Yeah.
But for me, I've always seen it. I'm enriched by it as a solitary experience. It's just the single player. I just want to get lost in these worlds, let my imagination go. And Tony, as you said earlier, like the good and evil battle that like gets extrapolated. That for me, like that was more real than I would yawn my way through mass altar serving because I couldn't wait to get home and play Nintendo or PlayStation. Like, and until late in high school when I had a conversion, and it was like, this is really real, and still was able to like find the balance of gaming and my faith. Like these were where the real stories were. These were the stories that spoke to my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Oh no. Go. You're good.
Yeah, you talk a lot about kind of in the beginning of your book, Bobby, the sense of identity that people have when they play video games. And yeah, just the heroic nature that people get to take part in when they play these particularly single player games. So yeah, could you like speak more on that? Like, do you feel like that kind of influenced your growth in your faith of like, oh, I feel this sense of virtue here in this game that is inspiring me to live out more virtue in my own life?
Yeah, that's a good question. What my mind goes to is just how like safe the world is. Like we've Google mapped most of the planet. So like, where's my adventure? Like, I just feel kind of maybe stuck in my safe suburb. There's no real mission or quest for me. And like, games offered that. Like, you can go on an adventure. I don't know what's over that hill. The map is all cloudy and foggy, and it's up to me to go and save the chicken, or, you know, however big or however small the plot was. And yeah, that question of virtue too. It's like, I want to be excellent. Like, I want to be the hero. And even like when I used to teach at an all boys school, and would even talk about, like, you know, a lot of games have morality meters. Isn't that interesting? If we say like, oh, good and evil are just made up concepts, it's like, okay, but you see the seeds throughout the culture, like, and even in games, like, I'm treated differently if my virtue meter is high versus if I'm more of a scoundrel. Like, there's consequences. You have free will, you have free choice, but so even in games kind of echo that, like, yeah, who do I want to be? And even games who like give you that choice, I have a hard time being the scoundrel. It's usually because I pressed the wrong button and I accidentally shoot a guy, and now the whole town is after me. So that's my attempt at a short answer to that.
No, that's great.
Yeah, not Megan said Knights of the Old Republic too. Like, very much a experience of like, wow, I'm not just on a track of a story in the game. It's like, oh, I can decide, and that's going to have consequences.
Yeah, I was playing Detroit Become Human with my friend a couple years ago, and you basically play as these like robots that are trying to become human. And yeah, all the decisions you make affect your relationship with different characters and how the storyline goes. And yeah, like it's interesting how like who you are in real life like influences the decisions that you make in the game, and maybe vice versa. I don't know. But yeah. Tony, what was your first experience with gaming, and how did you come to love games?
Great. Yeah. So I grew up with the Super Nintendo, but it was really the N64 PlayStation 1 era for me that things started to click. So I would say like playing Mario Kart with my siblings, or like Super Smash Brothers with my siblings. So like I got thrown into it from the, you know, kind of like you said, playing GoldenEye with the neighbor, that kind of thing. But then I came across Final Fantasy. So the Final Fantasy series, namely was Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 that I kind of played first out of, now there's 16. Plus there's even more than that, I think. But it was the feeling of something being larger than life. Yes, like, yeah, my favorite game is definitely World of Warcraft, simply, again, because I got buddies I play with, and it's great. But I feel like the single player experiences that are larger than life have always brought me in. You know, like Final Fantasy 7, you know, Sephiroth, he's got a meteor coming down. You literally have to save the planet. Or like
you talk about an epic villain soundtrack.
Yeah, goodness. I mean, just the entire Final Fantasy series. And of course, yeah, the music, that was another component too for me. Was my brother, my siblings and I, we're all musicians. So like we would sit and we would try to figure out the tunes on the piano together. And I think and that's kind of what got me into the industry, making music for games, is because I want to give that experience to others, like just feeling something from the music. But the larger than life aspect, more recently, like Mass Effect, if anyone's played Mass Effect, right, where there is sort of the moral compass, there is like decision making, but you're literally like trying to save the universe. Like you just feel so small. Or like Ocarina of Time, you're like this little no-name boy and you have to save the world. Like I love that stuff. And so for me, my earliest experiences and what really has drew me into it were those types of games. And again, when you throw an orchestra behind it all, I mean, it just won me over. Like, I'm sorry, it just won me over. And even like Link in Ocarina of Time, and Link in all of the Zelda games, he's wordless. He says no words, but yet he has like the courage within him to go and do the right thing. But he doesn't say a thing except like, like swinging a sword, like that's it. Nothing else. And I always loved that about it. He's kind of this wordless hero, but he does the right thing. I don't know. It always just
Yeah, Gregory says, as another composer, one huge aspect for me is the music in the game. If the music is that good, it adds so much for me, and I'm so hyped when I can catch little motifs or themes within boss fights. It adds
Yeah.
so much to the story, if only unconsciously.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
At the
Yeah.
risk of derailing this on a single topic, the music absolutely captured me, like my imagination from games, from Super Nintendo through the Final Fantasy series to Uncharted. And today was a Saturday, so I actually had like some time to myself, and I fell down the rabbit hole of Bear McCreary's blog,
Mm,
who has composed for movies and Outlander, and he did the recent God of War games
Mm.
and like incredible scores. But he
yes.
takes such amazing notes. Like he pours his heart out in these blogs of how he came up with certain character themes, how he got the choirs together,
Mm.
what these characters, like how he tried to embody like Kratos's masculine, just Spartan, like man, a few words. So the music is just 3 notes for his
Mm.
theme. Anyway, like
Mhm.
I mean, you have the 1 to 3 hour mixes on YouTube where you just kind of like my ambient, I gotta get work done, 3 hour God of War
Yeah.
mix goes on. Like, um, and for people like who are religious or not religious, music is so often like the cut through to the transcendent,
Yes.
Mhm.
you know. And I attempted to put a little of that in the book, and it's really hard to write about music, like because music is just something so much more, I don't know, like visceral to like good storytelling and to the soul. So it's hard to
Yeah.
do it in justice in words. It just has to kind of like wash over you.
And you know,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me, Teresa, if you don't mind me jumping in, I want to,
No, go
because
ahead,
so
please.
Bobby, like so I've been making music for games for about 10 years now. I think this is like my 10th year, largely indie games. I guess Minecraft was like the one AAA thing, but mostly indie games I work in. But I would say maybe the last, not right now, but a couple years ago, last few years, I was really grappling with like, okay, here we are in a very tumultuous world. And it's almost like I feel very called to pull people away from their screens and get outside and go do something. So I was really kind of grappling with like, hey, I'm making music for video games, and I kind of feel like I'm only contributing to, maybe people who maybe play them a little too much or whatever it is. Like I was really grappling with this, but then I have a great friend, another man of faith. He was like, you have no idea what your music might be doing to have people looking toward God. And that like blew my mind. I was like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, how is that? I'm just a guy who makes music. I think because it's just, I'm so used to it that I kind of don't really, I sort of needed that sort of wake up call, I guess.
Mm.
But it just really hit me like how the beauty within, I mean, even the art or the story, whatever it is, beauty in general within these experiences can point to God. And I think it was like, I had to kind of get out of my own head a little bit and just, okay, this is where God has placed me. And I just gotta keep doing this thing, in hopes that I reach somebody. But I just wanted to speak on that, Bobby. That's all.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and yeah, I agree, Bobby. 'Cause, like music can be difficult to explain. I- I'm a music composer myself, and it's like it's such an internal experience. Like, it's not necessarily tangible, but it's so like yeah, it's so pointing to what we are made for, which is the Lord. And one of my questions was going to be about the transcendentals and how you have all sort of experienced that through games. But yeah, especially music, it really cuts through. I think so much because it's so internal. And yeah, like Tony, hearing about your own witness as like a Catholic and being in the industry, I'm sure you've had some challenges, maybe like being in that industry as a Catholic and composing for games. But I'm glad that that person said that to you, because your music is very beautiful and
Thank you.
certainly can bring people closer to the Lord.
Yeah, it was just a sort of, I feel like it was one of those Holy Spirit moments for me. The Lord just put this guy, one of my best friends, right in front. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, just don't leave the industry, please. Like, the industry needs what you're doing. I was like, okay, I guess, sure. I'm going to keep rolling with
Mhm.
it, whatever the Lord
Yeah,
wants, right?
yeah,
But I do love it. I mean, I love it. Now now I feel very confident about where I am and all that stuff. But there was a time, a little bit of a grapple there.
yeah. I'm curious to know, we have a lot of, gamers here. We also have a lot of writers. This is primarily a writing convention. I'm curious to know, what kind of games do you think the world needs? What kind of stories does the world need? What do games need more of?
Tony?
I would have to say that I feel like we need more games that promote the good, like, and not necessarily just a great example would be if anyone else is, I'm not really much of a movie buff, but like there's a movie that John Krasinski came out with recently, A Quiet Place, maybe a few years ago, where it was like the family was really like the whole family was the protagonist, like a solid family, right? And we live in a world now where family is not really like, not even on the docket from a worldly perspective. So I feel like if games can promote the good, the holy, in a way that's not like, hi, here's Jesus, because I think that will simultaneously push people away, but in a way like you described it, Bobby, Red Dead Redemption 2, where like the message is quite Christ-like in a way, or really promotes sacrifice and potentially even self-sacrifice for the good of something else or someone else, like, in my opinion, and things that are beautiful, like just beautiful experiences. Let the art be beautiful, let the music be beautiful. I think that's where I come from.
Well, and Tony, to what you were saying, like the world needs our gifts and needs what the Lord has given us. Like what Tolkien would talk about, like we're all sub creators. Like we're not the capital C creator. That's only God. We are the sub creators. And so we've been given certain fields to till. And that may be small and local, that may be larger, but we owe it to use the skills. And so I have a friend of mine who's really into board games, and he's always finding a new one or a new card game every other month. And we've got to learn a whole bunch of more rules. It's like, just play the game. Like, just stick with one game. Let's play it. But it's like the story matters. The story like is all over the place. I lose interest quickly. To, again, I fell down the God of War, like the back end rabbit hole today, just reading a lot of stuff. But how important it was, how many story, how much input they had on the writing, like on the story, like what is the character's motive, like what makes for a really compelling villain. Like I find the games that I play over and over again are the ones with the best stories. Like the gameplay may be really fun, but the story, I'm like, it's just, I tend to not go back to it. Like I said at the beginning, like the games that are like my Pride and Prejudice, where it's like I could read this again and again. It's like those are the ones I'm going to go back to. So for the writers in the room, we're all tempted by imposter syndrome. We're all tempted to get in our heads and be like, who cares? What's gonna move the needle? It's like, you never know. Like it may be 10 people that read your stuff, and maybe 10,000, but to put it out there anyway, like we need it. We need more of the good, true, and the beautiful, creatively as we can, because like straightforward homilies and lectures, there's a place for it, but stories are so, that's why Jesus used stories, because they're so like they slide under the surface instead of just kind of like, here's a bunch of rules. It's like, let me tell you a story about a hobbit who had to take this, who couldn't take the eagles. Don't ask me why. He just couldn't take the eagles to take this ring to the, so anyway, that's why story and good writing matters.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so any writers here, if you're wanting to write for games, go do it. We need your stories out there. And just as we've talked about, like games are such a different way of self-discovery, I would say. Of you get to interact with the world, you get to be there, you get to experience the story for yourself. And so for people to encounter the message of the gospel, maybe explicitly or not explicitly, that can be such a move or a seed for somebody to come to know Christ. Lily says she would like to see a game where you have a family you can always go back to for help and healing, recharging, but you also have to protect them. And maybe the dad is an NPC who will help you if you ask.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd say too, like creating a game is such a team activity, because not like it's the body of Christ. Like not everyone is the hand or the foot, and like not everyone can compose music. Not everyone knows how to tell a good story. So if that is your skill, that is needed.
Yeah. I would love, Bobby, do you know what a game jam is?
I am ashamed to say no.
That's okay. Basically, a game jam is, I'm assuming, Tony, you know what a game jam is. You've
Yep.
probably
Oh
done a
yeah.
bunch. Yeah. So essentially, a game jam is like, uh, it's a short period of time where a bunch of people get together to create a game. It could be like a week, it could be a weekend, it could be a month. They can be in person or online, but all these people come together and form small little teams and make a game surrounding around a certain theme. And you get hundreds of games made in like a week, just like such a really short amount of time. And then it's all these people who have never met each other before. And so my dream is to have a Catholic game jam where we have a bunch of just Catholic writers, animators, music composers, game developers come together and make a ton of virtuous games. I feel like we don't have to wait for the people with the big bucks to go and make the newest virtuous game. I think we can just make it now. So Emma says,
I think you're leading the charge.
yeah, I would love to. So stay
I'll tell you
tuned
one
for
thing
that.
I've always wanted is, and I don't know if anyone's done it, but like, and I don't have a VR headset, but I would love to see like a Passion of the Christ VR kind of like narrative walking game where like you're basically just witnessing the thing, but like VR style. I think it'd be so cool if it was done well. If it was done
Yeah.
well. Totally just throwing it out there. Anyone wants to get adventurous, because I would love to see something like that.
Yeah.
Personally. But
Catherine says VR Stations of the Cross.
oh my goodness, it'd
Whoa.
be beautiful. Oh, it'd be
Yeah.
amazing. Just got to get a good team for it. Basically,
Yeah.
everyone here in the chat, just go start making that. It'll be done in 6 months.
Oh, Trevor says there's a group doing that. Oh,
Oh, no
interesting.
kidding. Oh, cool.
Share it.
Oh, wow.
Let's hear about it. I would love to see what they're doing. But awesome. Let's see. We're at 37. We're a little over time, but this is great conversation. Let's see. Do you have a moment in a game where you felt like you really had to grapple with something, like morality wise as a Catholic? And how did you kind of respond to that?
I think so. A memory that comes to mind was in college. I was a sophomore, I think, and at the time it was Grand Theft Auto 3 and then Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So I had really come alive to my faith. I was pretty much living at the Newman Center across the street. I was super involved, and I was still playing games. And I remember a moment playing either Vice City or Grand Theft Auto 3 and just feeling like, like, should I be playing this? And kind of that moment of like, I'm not a Puritan by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I probably lean too far to laxity when it comes to, I have friends that are very like strict. And this is a beautiful thing too with that the Catholic thing, the Catholic approach offers is there's a discernment, is you got to measure your own conscience, your own what you can handle. There are some objective, like, don't go there, like things in the faith, but there's also gray areas of, can I handle this story? Can I handle this movie? And so for me, it was like, am I becoming a better man by playing this game? And the fact that I was like having to ask it was a bit iffy. It was kind of like, I could probably play something else. Ironically, it's the same Rockstar development team that makes Red Dead, which I would argue like there's a lot more like it's a much more moral story than some of the Grand Theft Auto stuff. So for me, that was a moment of bleeding into like my faith actually influencing what I'm playing. And now as a dad, there's also like the time. Like, am I giving to my primary vocation, which is my marriage and my children, so that she's not becoming a gaming widow, and my kids are like, where's dad? Like so sublimating my desire to play to serve my family
Yeah.
has also been an exercise in like, Lord, I know this brings me joy, but help me to like, I'll play when I play. This is more important right now.
Yeah. Blessed Carlo only played 1 hour a week. I'm like,
That
Self-imposed.
is true. Yeah, penance.
yeah,
Right there.
self-imposed as
It
a
wasn't
teenager.
his mom. Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. How about
Yeah.
you, Tony?
I don't. I've been trying to sit. I've been thinking. I don't think there's a single moment in a game. I largely, aside from WoW, aside from World of Warcraft, I largely basically stuck to everything Nintendo released and Final Fantasy on the Sony side of things, like Kingdom Hearts. And generally, when you're playing Nintendo games, the biggest thing you got to grapple with is like the cartoon violence. So like, I feel like from an in-game perspective, I don't think I've ever come across anything. I would say, kind of seconding what Bobby said, is especially like the World of Warcraft is infamously known for like taking away people's lives, but I've been admittedly over the last 10 years, they've done a lot better job of like making it more time efficient. So, but I think the thing I grapple with is balancing, okay, my buddies are saying, hey, jump on. And I'm like, well, no, I gotta do this. I gotta get the car. I gotta go out date night with the wife, like that kind of stuff. That I feel like is always the moments of grappling.
Yeah, definitely. Like the ordering of your heart and what should take priority in your life.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Because I do think we need, and maybe this is what Bobby, I'm so excited to read your book, by the way, after you talking about it. I'm gonna get it like today. Like I think we need play. We need time to do something. And maybe it's not video games necessarily. Maybe it's literally going outside or throwing a ball. But in our case here, we're in just this kind of these fantasy worlds. So we need that downtime. And I feel like, again, it's like grappling with, okay, how much do I need? Am I over consuming it? Like, how much do I, if I'm being real honest with myself, how much time do I actually need? Those types of questions.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice at times. And and even like spouses having to talk about this, because some spouses see eye to eye, some spouses play together, and some have a skewed understanding. Like when they think of video games, they have a kind of a negative bias to it. So that's something to work through. And again, I'm very much a man of the both and. So introducing our kids slowly to video games. We just got our oldest daughter's Switch last year. So that's now opened up. Okay, how do we play in moderation? What do we play when we play together? And so they're like, Dad, what's Red Dead? I'm like, well, you'll play when you're older. So they know, like, it's, and I'm very upfront with Carlo Acutis' story. Like, here's a millennial on the way to sainthood who played video games, and he also put God first and used technology for good. And so we can do the same.
That's kind of that's my wife. So my wife and I, we play together. Mario Kart was kind of like, when we really started playing together, it was Mario Kart, then Minecraft. We have all these Minecraft worlds we play together. And because she's such a beautiful, she's like a true melancholic soul, where she just sees beauty everywhere. So Minecraft is like her playground, But we always pray before we play. Always. We will not leave the dinner table, and we will not pray something, or we will not play a game together until we let's get through a bit of this rosary, whatever it is. Let's pray this. Let's do this novena. That comes first every single time. And that's what we hope. God willing, we have kids. Pray for us. Pray for her. That we want to kind of continue that into their lives as well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you both so much for that insight. I know that is going to be super helpful for people. I'm personally am single, and so I just have all the time in the world. And so, yeah, I definitely have to be very mindful of how I spend my time and prioritize my day. I like, Tony, what you said of like making sure that I pray before I play or do any other activity. But yeah, awesome. Well, I want to have time for the audience to ask any questions that they have. And so if you have any questions for Tony, Bobby, or myself, feel free to ask them anything about gaming, about the faith and gaming. Okay, Gregory, what do you think of games which give you so much freedom that gives you such choices as inappropriate romance options, leading to scenes that we'd all do better without, or intentionally choosing to be a bad guy and ending up doing some pretty bad stuff? While on the one hand, you have the option to be the actual hero, on the other, you can act like any action they want, good or bad, with no real consequences. Good question.
I would love to hear Bob because he wrote a book about, I'm sure. I would love to hear his thoughts before I say a word.
I would love to hear Tony.
Oh, okay. All right. Sure.
As I stall for time.
Yeah, sure. I like the discernment because I think that we also have to be able to, in my opinion, even making whatever, even if it's work, even if it's making music for games or whatever it is in our lives, like we have to be able to detach as well and recognize that it is a worldly thing and say, okay, so that's why I think that the discernment factor comes into play. Because like another good example would be like The Witcher, right? Another game with a very interesting story and great characterization, great writing. The Witcher 3, I knew nothing about it, but all my buddies were like, hey, you got to play The Witcher. You got to play The Witcher. I'm like, okay, sure. I'll give it a whirl. Great music. But there are some questionable things in that as well. But I was able to, in my, however old I was, 26, 27-year-old brain, was like, okay, that's obviously like real garbage, but there is some good that we can pull out of this. So I don't know. To me, it's always felt like a gray area. I feel like if you know in your heart, if you know that there's a scene that's coming up, or you know that something exists in that game and you're playing it because of that, then you know that's a different story. But
yeah, it's an opportunity for discernment and conversation. You know, like freedom, free will, and the fact that it's not enough that I just sit in my room and say I'm a good person. There is something that our actions reveal who we are. Which is, like I said earlier, like it's hard for me to play the scoundrel sometimes because there is this, and it's probably because I think too much about it. Is like this avatar is an extension of me in some way.
Yeah, I like what you both said about discernment. Yeah, and I kind of went to the thought of free will as well. Of like, yeah, we could choose to do whatever we wanted here in this world. I recently played the Hogwarts Legacy game on the Switch, and there's some really dark themes around there about grief and about suffering. And for me, what is tempting is like the sense of curiosity of like, oh, what if I did become the bad guy, or like what if I did make the bad choice, what would happen? But I feel like whenever I do make the bad choice, I'm always left with like a ugh feeling in my heart of like, I know that I didn't do that in real life, but I still kind of made a choice there. And so it kind of leaves you feeling a bit heavier, just like, yeah, like it does impact your soul in a sense. But yeah, it is also a gray area, because I see games as art. And so it's like it can be very nuanced and complex. But yeah, I think what you both said about discernment of, yeah, is this gonna be good for me is just a good question to ask when you're consuming any sort of media, I feel like. Great question.
I like Emma's question. Do we have a favorite console?
Yeah.
Virtual Boy.
Oh,
Virtual
man.
Boy.
Wow.
That was short-lived.
I have always felt, I don't know, something about the N64, something about it was just like the golden, like the games were so quirky and buggy, like, and there was no updates at the time. So like if the game had a bug, everyone had the bug in the game, you know? There was no downloadable content. It was such a great time for games.
That's funny. Tell me about the Virtual Boy, because it looks like some really old VR.
Yeah, it was a very short-lived experiment by Nintendo, and we rented it from Blockbuster. and it was this
Wow,
like
blockbuster.
it was this tripod thing. You had this, and you put your eyes up to it, and it had a controller, and you're playing it, and it just was red and black, and it was like very, very early 3D stuff, and it wore your eyes out real quick. But
Wow.
yeah, deep
Yeah,
cut.
I'm looking at images right now. Oh man.
Nintendo
I
was
feel
ahead
like
of their time.
yeah, they're like watch out, Meta. Like
Yeah. I like
Awesome.
Catherine has a good question. Where would we
Yeah.
start?
Oh,
Maybe,
if
and
we're interested
Theresa,
in
you
writing
we
for
could
games.
probably both talk about this. But I guess my first answer to you, Catherine, would be to Discord servers. So I come from like the forum generation of like when I got into game dev, the game dev industry, it was like forums and Twitter. But now that Twitter's kind of like on this perpetual, like no one knows what's happening to it. Discord servers dedicated to like game development, or even indie game developers. If you find one on Steam that you like, they probably have a Discord server. But essentially getting to know other game developers who are programming, making art, making whatever involved with games, getting to know them and connecting with them, just saying like, hey, looks like you're working on a thing, I love what you're doing. And just making connections that way. They will be the people to hire you if they end up making it like another game of their own and they need a writer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost
Yeah.
like the friends will hire you. The friends will hire you. And if you have a portfolio of sorts, where can you show your work as a writer? However that looks like for you. This way the people who are making games know that you exist. They know that you're a writer. Someone 4 years from now say, hey, I remember you from that thing 3 years ago, and I'm making a game now and I loved your writing. That's honestly how every time I've gotten a job in the game dev industry was like, hey, remember that thing we did 5 years ago? I'm ready for my next project and I want you on. So it's just kind of how it goes sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of goes for so many creative endeavors. And Tony, you're the most experienced here. I mean, having written for some Minecraft stuff, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just echo what Tony has to say. Like, put yourself in those spaces where there are people who are making games. Lots of Discord servers. If you're not in a city that has a lot of like meetups and things like that, Discord servers, things like this, like meeting up with other writers who want to play games, like just chat with each other, get each other's contacts, and talk about like how you might want to collaborate or talk about ideas. If you are in a city that is a hub for making games, like try and find some meetups in person. Yeah, so much of it is like not necessarily going after the AAA companies, but just like starting small and building these indie games. And I feel like, you might even have more freedom in going the indie route because you can make, whatever choices you want, and steer the ship in the direction that you want. So yeah, just making connections with people who also want to do what you're doing or are already doing it.
Yeah. And the indie game landscape is definitely, there's going to be a boom, I think, because the game industry as a whole, there's been all these layoffs and all this stuff. Like every big companies, just Riot, EA, Ubisoft, they're all losing people, Bungie. So I think what's going to happen now is it might be in a lull right now, so there might not be any immediacy hires. But what I will say is all those people who got laid off from all the big companies are probably going to make smaller companies. So I feel like there's going to be this resurgence taking place very soon. That's my prediction. I could be way off the mark, but so now's a good time. Now's a good time to just get to know people because you never know.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Great. Anyone else have another question or any comments?
Callie asked about AI and the future of gaming.
Oh.
And I mean, I can't speak about within the industry. I just want to say, like, as wild and terrifying as some of the stuff that AI can do, there's still always going to be the need for the human component. Like to put together a good story, to put together a good soundtrack. So, and I watched Terminator 2 very young. So I'm very biased against machines and AI. And so I'm in the anti-robot club there. But our gifts, kind of what Tony was saying, and Theresa too, is like, use your gifts, because you don't know where they're going to take you. Like, start building up your portfolio now, because it's going to be needed even wherever tech and AI goes. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to art, I don't think I don't think artists are gonna like be out of work or jobs. I mean, being an artist is already kind of hard in and of itself, but you know, AI can't really replace the human aspect, and all the stories that we experience through games. And yeah, Tony, you mentioned like you experience something that's like greater than life, or just like something that is larger than oneself. That doesn't you I don't think you can get that from AI, unless I don't know, maybe they're really smart, but
There's
there's a human touch that is just so unique and created by the Lord himself that, you know, AI can't necessarily reproduce.
there is a game. I would put this as, I'm gonna go not back on my initial answer, but I'm gonna tie it. I'm gonna tie my favorite game with another one called Outer Wilds. It's a single player game, not the Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds. They got very confused together because they were released like 2 months apart. But there is no way, I will die on this hill. There is no way AI could ever make anything like Outer Wilds ever. If I talk about the game, I will spoil something, because everything is a puzzle. Everything is like a mystery, but it's such a beautiful, the game is such a beautiful reminder of how small you are. But even if you're small, you can make a difference on a global scale in your own little way. I cannot emphasize it enough, but I will die on this hill. There's no way AI could ever design something so thought-provoking, so wonderfully designed, so puzzling at the same time. It's just Outer Wilds. Cannot recommend it enough, because it feels like the antithesis to AI in a way. Like, it's almost like there's no way someone could just create this, like a robot would be able to just make this. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, my friend told me about this game. She said she really liked it. Oh, the art is gorgeous. Like, even just
It's
this
very spacey.
poster,
Like,
it's beautiful.
You're flying around and you have to solve this kind of, the universe is going to blow up in 20
No,
minutes.
no, you're saying too much. You're saying too much.
We want to play
I
it
just
too.
read it off the Wikipedia, so I didn't.
Great. Well, we could talk for many hours on end, but well, I think we'll just wrap it up there. But thank you both so much for taking the time to be on here, and thank you to everyone for coming and watching this panel and for your wonderful questions. If you want to connect with Bobby or connect with Tony, I'm going to put all their links and socials in the chat. If it's formatted okay. And just another thing, Saint Sprites is doing a giveaway, and it does include a copy of Bobby's book. Let me just change my background so you can see things. So we're doing a giveaway. Comes with a copy of Bobby's book, as well as a copy of Jared D's book, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, The Gospel According to Video Games. It'll also come with these sticker sheets, Blessed Carlo with the Eucharist. They're glittery, as well as 5 individual Saint Sprite stickers of your choice, and a $10 e-gift card to any console that you play. So head over to the vendor fair where Saint Sprite's booth is, and you can sign up for the giveaway there. We'll choose 2 winners randomly. And yeah, if you are somebody who wants to get involved with games or wants to write for games, please, check out our booth and click on the giveaways so that you can sign up for our newsletter and get connected. Would love in the future to just build a community of Catholic gamers and Catholic game developers. So if that's something you're interested in, check out the booth. But yeah, we are out of time. Our next event coming up right after.
Maybe you should start it, Tony.
Maybe we should start it, Bobby.
We
yes.
with our powers combined.
Yeah, everyone head over. Oh, well, yeah, thank you all so much. Yeah, it was great to chat with you, Tony and Bobby. But yeah, everyone head over to Stage Telperion for the next event. And yeah, hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference.